Hey friends, this is the Miss Volfie from our half-acre homestead, and today I'm going to show you how to reclaim fabric from an old quilt to put into a new quilt. Now this quilt was made for my 27-year-old son, Arthur, by his grandmother on his biological father's side. Now, he's had this since he was a year old, and it is obviously falling apart. Now, I'm going to do my absolute best to make this a cutter quilt and rebuild it. When by cutter quilt, I mean I'm taking out the usable blocks, and I'm going to take them apart and see if I can't use them. I will add some more fabric that Nan has given me and from me. And by the time it's done, I'm hoping it will be a nice quilt with both pieces from his grandmother and Nan and me. A multi-generational project. Here's my basis of the quilt I'm remaking. You saw the quilt. Now here's some fabric from my father's linen cupboard. I use this sparingly. And here is some cotton pedal pushers that from Nan. I have lots and lots more fabric than this left over from my project for John's. And here are the pieces I managed to salvage from this other quilt. And I was taking them apart. As you can see, they don't all, you know, some of them are racked, but they're usable pieces. And what I'm going to end up doing is taking all these red pieces out, because when I showed my son his tattered old quilt, this was the first piece of fabric he mentioned. So I really wanted to, because I think he thought they looked like Pac-Man or something. So here is, I'm going to show you what I did. Here is a piece. Now this is ripped, and that's fine. I will be able to replace that maybe with one piece from here. It's not going to look exactly the same, but he'll know that I actually did it. So first and foremost, we're going to take the last of the binding off. I was thinking of trying to save the binding. Now, this is a seam ripper, okay? This is a handy little tool, and I seem to go through them and lose them like crazy. Now, it's great for taking apart sewing machine seams, but hand sewn seams, especially in quilting, are a real pain. They actually do a whole lot better for sewing and holding things together than machine stitching. And trust me, once you've hand sewn something, you really don't want to try and take it apart. But in this case, we are doing what we can to salvage some of this fabric from Arthur's quilt. This quilt was made for him before his first, I thought it was his first birthday, but I actually, yes it was. It was given to him. His father brought it down to him for his first birthday. Now his grandmother, on his biological dad's side, has since passed away. So I'm going to try and incorporate as much family in here as possible. Now initially I was going to save what blocks I could, but I want to use up these that I cut when I made my brother John's quilt. Now the problem is I have lots of these strips, and these blocks, as you can see, are a little bit wider. This is 2.5 inches, so these are probably 3 inches. So I'm going to take all of these apart to save what I can, and then I'm going to trim them to fit so that I can use all these strips. Now the challenging part comes, because Arthur's grandmother sewed with a really tiny sewing machine stitch. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's really tiny. It's even a challenge to get this seam ripper under a stitch. And this is how the seam ripper works, folks. You put this point under the stitch and you cut the stitch. And if you do 2 or 3 of them, they normally will just pull apart. But these stitches are so tiny, it's going to be a real labor of love. The fabric begins to come apart much easier, but I don't want to pull on it. I don't want to tear it. So now we go through here where the fabric is separated, and we just start cutting these, ripping these stitches. This is not the best of seam rippers. It's a dollar store seam ripper, which means it's not as sharp as it should be. These stitches are so tiny. God rest your soul, Mrs. Guest. But by God, these stitches are tight and tiny. And you have to be really careful when you're breaking these stitches with the seam ripper not to pull too hard on the fabric, because this is really old fabric too. It's been through many a wash. Okay, so I have lots and lots of strips left from when I did the Simple Tide log cabin quilt from Brother John. So I'm going to use these. I'm also going to use some fabrics that I bought while I was visiting Brother John. If you're going to use new fabric, folks, please always wash it, put it through the dryer to pre-shrink before you start cutting and using it, because if you cut it new, A, it's got chemicals and fire retardants on it. B, if you cut it new and piece it together, the first time it goes in the dryer, it's probably going to shrink and you're going to split some seams. Okay? And I got these just because they're so beautifully festive looking. Now these are what I have reclaimed from the quilt that Arthur's grandmother made him when he was a year old. Anyway, these are squares are 3 inches. Now I've taken them apart, as you saw, and I've ironed them out. Now our strips from that we had cut up for John's quilt are 2.5 inches, which is perfect because it means I can trim off some of these outer frayed edges of this fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm just very carefully, I'm going to, yeah, they're 3 inches square. And what I'm going to do is very carefully line this up, and I'm going to trim each one of these blocks down to 2.5 inches. Now I'm rotating them and cutting this way so that I can cut away all the frayed edges. It's a lot of work, but you know what? Reclaiming fabric from a beloved project is important. Okay folks, I just want to show you that I'm not cutting these all individually unless I come up with something like this, but even so, it's pretty simple because these are all the same size, they're all 3-inch squares. I can take an extra second, line all these up to the best of my ability, because I do have a 1/4 inch to play with here. Now if you are running, if your fabric, if you're just trimming a tiny bit and you have to be more careful with your sizing, don't do this method. But I'm just going to, see, these squares are, you know, 3 inches to 3 1/8. And there's that one that's ripped. I'm going to make sure I have enough. This is 3 inches, but I don't want to, you know, cut it all off just one side because I want to clean these up. And using my straight edge that I just cut as my guide, and making sure I still have, because I haven't cut these 2 edges yet, that I still have enough room to work with. And I'm just going to keep going around and around. Now that I have a cut edge at the bottom and a cut edge at the side, I can use those as square. And now I can make sure that I am a 2.5 inch cut. And now we've got 3 sides all nicely cut. So I'm going to put my bottom edge at the 2.5 inch mark. My inside is on the 2.5 inch mark, and I'm on the edge so I can feel safe in cutting that off. And we take our pin out, and here is our nice pile of squares. Okay, so here's our green pieces, and some of these still have fabric to them, but attached to them, but because I was going to cut them in strips anyway because they're a solid piece. See, she even used 2 pieces of fabric, waste not, want not. Sew 2 pieces together to make a full block. Arthur's grandmother, God rest her soul, was a lovely woman, eh dear? I only wish I had something of my mother's for him, but I don't. But we got Grandpa Dad's, so. All right, now I want to cut these into 2.5 inch strips. 6 little strips out of those 2 pieces. Okay, so first we're going to start with the oldest and the most delicate of the fabrics, and I'm going to take a strip of the 2.5 inch of beige on white that I was using in the log cabin tied quilt, and I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot as my sewing guide, and I'm going to use a smaller stitch. Now if you're not old hat at it like I am, folks, please pin your fabric to your pin your fabric together. Now I have 15 of these little red blocks, and I'm only going to sew 10 of them to this strip. Why? Is because the other 5 are going to be added to the other side. And I will be doing this differently when I'm working with just total strips, okay? I've got these all sewn to the contrasting fabric, and I'm going to cut them apart. And I'm being really careful, folks, to line up the outer edge of the fabric with my ruler. Why? Because if you're not careful, you can cut this crooked and then you're all buggered up. Okay, because we have 15 of these red blocks, that means we're going to have 3 completed blocks, because there's 5 of these in each one of my blocks. So we're going to need 2 for each one that we are going to sew red on the other side. So we're going to need 6 of these set aside, and we're going to need 3 of these. 1, 2, 3, that we're going to be sewing white on the other side. We are now going to take these 3 blocks, sew the white to the other side of the red. Now these are the only 3 pieces that is white, red, white. The rest are going to be red, white, red. Now we just have to have red on the other side. Okay, so here we have our 3 center pieces for our 3 main blocks. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to take these 6 blocks and these 6 pieces, and I'm going to sew red on the other end, just like so. Okay, now we want to iron these out nice and straight. If you don't want to iron, don't take up quilting. Okay, so here we go. We have our 3 centers and our 6 outsides. And now I'm going to start pinning, only because I want where my fabric meets to be very, very, very precise. I'm going to take these And I'm going to line up the red seams. You see what I mean there? And I'm going to put a straight pin right through the sewing line of the white fabric. And by rights, it should be through the sewing line of both sides. And now, again, always using the same allowance that you've set from the beginning, we're going to sew these two pieces together. Now it really doesn't matter if you find you have a little bit extra on the outside, because it's the outside. And that's going to be part of your seam allowance for your entire block. Okay, so here's our first finished block of my son's quilt. Him and his girlfriend are going to get this for Christmas. Okay, this is the Mrs. Volfie from our half-acre homestead saying that is how you reclaim fabric from an old quilt to use in a new one. Take care, bye-bye.